An economy that re-establishes the link between national economic success and the ability to provide for loved ones and get ahead. Those are our objectives, and that is our vision.
Good news for aged care workers this morning.
They deserve more than just our thanks. They deserve a wage rise.
The Labor government was elected on a promise last year to make medicines cheaper.
Some $2.2 billion of practical measures to strengthen Medicare. Good to be here the day before what will be a Labor budget in every sense tomorrow night.
The lead up to federal budgets is always dominated by speculation about individual decisions and lobbying for particular causes. But this year is a bit different. It will see the culmination of a campaign based on a rare consensus that the time has come to help the least well off and to address gender-based issues like parenting payments, superannuation and childcare. These pressures have played out as Labor has wrestled with a range of complex and expensive policy issues. Several of these have landed in the past month.
We are recasting the mission of the Australian Defence Force.
And not just defence spending. Over the past month, the government has outlined not only billions of dollars of changing priorities in the defence portfolio, but $11.3 billion to fund aged care wage increases, big, so far unclear changes looming in the NDIS, and profound shifts in the structure of our migration program, which will have big economic implications. They are in addition to the measures voters will be looking for to deal with a punishing increase in the cost of living in the past 12 months, and on top of that, a housing crisis.
This will be a responsible budget for Australians doing it tough.
The real challenge for the Treasurer is how to offer relief to households without throwing that fuel on the inflation fire.
That's because one-off payments, think the infamous cash handouts in the GFC which were painted as money for TV sets, can be inflationary if they add to demand and therefore price pressures.
To be clear, a bunch of this money has to be spent. We have huge fairness fails, job seeker, where we're moving the dial a bit. Other areas where people in poverty are really struggling with them. This money needs to be spent. It's just that the government also needed to make enough saving, higher taxes, lower spending elsewhere to at the same time make life easier for inflation and hence for interest rates as well.
Treasurer Jim Chalmers and Finance Minister Katie Gallagher have repeatedly said that there may be a short-term boost to the budget from booming resource prices. There is now widespread speculation that tomorrow's budget will actually show a surplus. That in itself is remarkable after the spending of recent years. It may also get the economic credibility monkey off Labor's back.
All around the world, government budgets are improving because of inflation. Inflation just makes the pie of dollars bigger. The biggest chunk of the improvement is coming from what the world is paying us for the stuff that Australia sells to the world. We sell food and fuel. That combination went up in price after Russia invaded Ukraine. We made big bucks off that as a nation and a lot of tax dollars as well.
The problem is the good times aren't going to last, because of big structural costs and because the big resource dollars won't necessarily continue. That means the attraction is to find short-term cost of living relief that doesn't get baked into the budget on an ongoing basis.
These are temporary windfalls. We know there are still longer-term structural budget challenges. We've locked in higher spending on NDIS, defence, aged care, and revenues over the medium term are not keeping up.
Beyond the immediate cost of living pain, there is intense pressure to deal with long-neglected settings for welfare payments that contribute to more than 3 million people living below the poverty line.
Well, the cost of living pressures are acute. Research we put out last year showed that 1 in 5 households were in energy stress in 2020, well before the price spikes. But the rate of stress doubled for low-income households and households on job seeker. What we need to see is a broad package to tackle poverty over the long term and to boost economic and social participation. Now, of course, the expert advisory reports have been clear that lifting the base rates of income support must be a priority.
The government has already announced some major decisions on welfare payments in the last couple of days in a blizzard of pre-budget announcements. They all fit in the doing a bit but not as much as had been hoped for category. Importantly, the government is going to let single parents stay on their slightly higher payments until their children are 14, instead of 8 at present, rather than automatically being thrown onto the dole. And there seems likely to be some sort of increase in the rate of the dole, or job seeker as it is technically known, though nowhere near the sorts of levels pushed by welfare advocates.
The other thing the government could look to is the rent assistance payment. That too goes to people on very low incomes. It hasn't kept pace with market rents.
Housing remains a vexed issue for the government, with its proposed housing fund stalled in the Senate and no great expectations of further budget assistance. Whatever it does tomorrow, though, it will need more money. The government says it has found savings of around $15 billion to fund new spending. It promised at the last election not to raise taxes, but it has already announced changes to superannuation tax and to the petroleum resource rent tax. Most economists say it's not enough.
So I think inevitably the government will have to raise taxes somewhere. When we look at the medium-term budget pressures, it's clear we've got a sizable structural deficit. That's not going to be closed with spending reductions alone.
What has also become clear in recent days is that there has been a late flurry of big spending, which may have altered the shape of the budget and its messages significantly.
The way the budgets work is you learn very late how much money's in the bucket. And when Treasury announced that, that number came in red hot, a whole lot of extra money. But that's the problem. You had a handful of people in a small room, suddenly with a lot of extra money. They appear to have decided to spend a lot of it. And when big bucks are spent fast, maybe those decisions are good, but there's a greater than usual risk that we've made mistakes.
It's been a messy lead up to this year's budget. Having set up 2 committees to advise it on policy, the government has not quite been in control of the debate. Budget night is its one night of the year when it should be able to control the narrative. All the signs suggest Jim Chalmers has a big story to tell.